We're quite used to watching videos online and having meetings online these days. But we don't always know where the person we're seeing is in the world. So let me share with you that I'm grateful to be a guest on the traditional territories of the Algonquin Nation in Kanata, Canada. And isn't it amazing that I can stand here and talk with you wherever you are, whatever device you're on. You can even speed me up, slow me down, whatever works best for you. This kind of global sharing has not been possible until recently. And it only is possible due to a long line of innovations. Of course, there are many other amazing innovations as well. We can think of the art and engineering innovations possible with 3D printing and virtual reality. The medical innovations that save lives each day. The agricultural innovations that continue to feed the world. And the transformation of transportation, for example, the autonomous vehicles right here from Kanata. You can probably think of many other amazing innovations. Innovations that have the power to make our lives easier, that benefit society, and that can even save the world from environmental degradation and climate threats. Right. Climate threats, though. Isn't it also innovations that have caused the environmental degradation and social disruption, killing off entire species, industries, and communities in the process? Let's think a little how it comes to that. If we take the example of the car, we can probably all imagine how amazing cars must have been when they were first introduced. How easy it was to get around, how fast they could go. It took us a while to realize there would be accidents and traffic jams, urban sprawl. And now we know greenhouse gases that threaten the planet. Even with the most amazing innovations, the most well-intentioned innovations, there can be negative consequences. And when you're in the moment of amazement about this new thing, it is so hard to think of the unintended, negative, potential consequences down the road or for people you don't even know. This is where inclusive innovation comes in. When we innovate together, it becomes much more likely that someone will think of the unintended consequences. And then it becomes much more likely that innovation will be successful in the long run. Part of the reason why I think so is that innovation is not just about technologies. It's very much about people. And innovation does not exist if there are not people producing it, distributing it, people writing clever ads and the music for the ads, people getting the finances to work, and at the end of the day, someone, maybe you, maybe I, has to actually buy or use the innovation. It's a whole process, and it takes a lot of different people. So innovation is actually a people game, but we're not using the power of the people yet. Inclusive innovation does exactly that. In my view, there are 4 elements to truly inclusive innovation: the who, the what, the why, and the how. Now, the who is pretty obvious. We have to include more people in the innovation process. We cannot keep thinking that innovators are just guys in lab coats or maybe turtlenecks. We know innovators come in any gender, any skin color, any profession, and any location in the world. So let's correct the historical exclusion and bring everyone into the innovation process. And then we also have to think about this. When we talk about innovation, we're talking about actions that affect the future. Let's go back to the example of the car. If we're talking about the next wave of innovation, let's say electric vehicles, we have to think, or we want to think actually really now, about what that means for people currently working in the oil patch or in stores that rely on the sale of gas for their survival. These folks have a real concern for their livelihood, a very legitimate concern. And today, they're making decisions based on that: career, family, purchasing, and political decisions. You know, it's a lot easier to innovate if you don't have that many people worried about your innovation. This is why we want to do inclusive innovation, This is why we want to bring everyone who has historically been excluded and those people who may be affected into the innovation process. I'm actually starting to see some progress on that. And I think we're starting to become more inclusive in the who is involved in innovation. And that already leads to changes in the what is innovative. Let's take a different example. Let's say the medical field. If you're thinking of medical innovations, what do you think of? Devices like X-ray machines or MRIs? Maybe vaccines? Well, one of the most impactful and life-saving innovations has been hand washing. Not a technology, a behavior change. When it was first introduced, it drastically reduced the mortality rates. Well, let's take a more current example, patient-centered care. A lot of hospitals nowadays are moving to a model where they're focusing on the journey of the patient, not so much the needs of the hospital or the doctors. This does require technologies. For example, we need new algorithms to schedule care or connect different service providers. But the main innovations are in the processes and the workflows, and even in the culture of the medical profession, and in how each of us approaches healthcare. Let's take this one step further and talk about community-centered care. So here we're looking at health in the community. We might see financial innovations. For example, hospital might get paid less for dialysis, but more for reducing diabetes in the community. So the kind of innovations that are required here are institutional. They're business models. They're innovations in the relationships between hospitals, individuals, and even other businesses. This isn't just happening in the medical field. This is a trend that's happening all over. We're seeing that when we're combining innovations, cultural, social, business, institutional, and of course also scientific and technological innovations, we get to the more disruptive and successful innovations. That is not possible with just a handful of people in a lab. So we need innovation to be more inclusive in who is involved to get to those more impactful and those complex innovations that combine the what, that are more successful going forward. This last example also already showed that the why we innovate is changing a little bit. We innovate for profits and also for people and the planet. Not because we're suddenly better people or anything like that. It's because we realize that people and the planet matter. COVID-19 has shown us that we cannot have a healthy economy without healthy people. And people need incomes to be healthy. COVID-19 has also shown us all sorts of different types of innovations. And to be honest, a bunch of them were failures, but there were also successes. And for sure, there was a lot of debate over what actually was a success or a failure. But something really stands out and is quite clear. When we're talking about global challenges, they cannot be addressed by one person alone, not even one country alone. Technology alone cannot address them. But with the right combination of people and innovations, it does become possible to address social and health outcomes at a global scale and with speed. And now that we know that, it becomes a lot harder to say we cannot do that for environmental outcomes. So I'm seeing a real progression from the who through the what to the why of inclusive innovation. And there's actually a lot of knowledge and research behind it that suggests that this will become even more important moving forward. The question that remains is the how. How do we do inclusive innovation? There is a short answer. The short answer is that we have to innovate how we innovate. You know, when the who, the what, the why change, we cannot just tweak the how. We know we have to introduce changes. The longer answer, of course, is much more complex. And I hope you're not waiting for me to give you that answer. Because what's remarkable here is that we cannot have one person tell us how to do inclusive innovation. No one innovation expert, no one CEO, no one protester in the street can determine how we all are going to do inclusive innovation. We need all those voices, plus the voices that are currently silent. We need trusted governance to hear the voices. So the how of inclusive innovation has to be created together. This is where I come back to the beginning of my talk and how amazing it is that we have all these ways of connecting with each other nowadays. You're watching this talk, so you have some access to the internet. You can join the conversation. You can give feedback. You can get feedback. If you start looking for the opportunities for inclusive innovation, you may be surprised and amazed how many there are and how doable this is. Let's do this together, because inclusive innovation is smarter innovation.